Great. So, how are we doing? Uh, who's feeling inspired? Well, like 60%. Who's feeling confused? How about the panelists? Confused? Not so much? Who's feeling skeptical? Oh, one brave person there, and maybe some other hands. Okay, this was an excuse to express my own emotions about today, actually. Uh, my name is Wouter van Noort. I'm a journalist. For NRC, I write about the future, which is basically the ideal excuse to write about anything that I find interesting. And up until today, actually, I thought I was in this really weird, nerdy niche of sort of exploring topics around consciousness, complexity, ecology, technology. Weird combination of stuff, right? But I feel right at home today. And actually, three words came into my mind today, and I'll elaborate on them a little bit before I go to the panelists. The first is the words liminal space. It's a word from anthropology describing the space between borders at the edge of something. It's mostly used to describe rites of passage. So if someone marries or if someone gets their bar mitzvah, there's this space in which they wait. The bride is waiting for her marriage. The boy is waiting for his circumcision. And there's really no way back. You cannot go back to being a little boy anymore if you're entered that space. But at the same time, what's ahead and what lies ahead is not yet quite known. And somehow, listening to the talks today, that word really popped into my mind, that we're clearly on the threshold of something new. We're leaving stuff behind. We're on the cusp of an initiation or a rite of passage. But also, it feels as if we don't know where we're headed, right? And there's a lot of mystery and uncertainty as of the direction of change that we're living to see. And the other word is probably the most abused word in our culture, namely the word paradigm. There's paradigm shifts everywhere, right? But it is an important word, actually coined by Thomas Kuhn, philosopher of science, who noticed how scientific progress does not go linearly. It happens in bursts. And in these times of bursts, we need new stories, we need new experimental tools. We completely have to sort of reframe the way we look at things. And the word has been mentioned a couple of times in these presentations. And it feels like one of those shifts, right? If you add everything up that we saw today, it feels like a paradigm shift. But at the same time, that little skeptic voice in me also thought of another word, chronocentrism, which is like egocentrism and anthropocentrism, the misconception that your time is the most important and most complex and things are moving fastest in your lifetime. Basically, everybody has that illusion. So basically, the question that I want to delve in for this wrap-up, it's quite a challenge to wrap 5 of these panelists up together, but it's exactly that question. What kind of time are we living through, and how do we navigate through it? And these are indeed quite big questions, but we have big speakers and big panelists here, who I am now going to dutifully introduce, of course. We have Andreas Weber, we have Joost Vervoort, we have Elisa Giacatti, sorry, I mispronounced. Okay. Heinrich Pees and Julia Rijsenbeek. And to start with you, Andreas, I'm really happy to sit next to you because I've been sleeping next to your book for quite some time.
It's really an honor, you know. It's one of these honors.
Yeah, but I was actually quite shocked because you wrote a wonderful book called Enlivenment, and which is literally by my bedside. And I've been traveling with it. I've been flicking through it continuously. But I was shocked to know when I talked to you that it's already 11 years old. So I'm only sort of discovering this, and I have to catch up with you somehow. Maybe you can enlighten us a little bit about the concept of enlivenment, because what you did today was more of an experience than a philosophical exercise. But please enlighten us about the enlivenment that you describe.
Yeah, thank you. So you see, it's somehow chrono-decentered that you have this book and take it as present, and I told you, okay, yeah, that's what I wrote 11 years ago, but it's also still somehow alive. Yeah, so yeah, I was when somebody found this Heike Löschmann from Böll Foundation found the title Enlivenment while we were kind of brainstorming because they were publishing the first edition of this book. I was super happy because it was such a nice word game with enlightenment. And the idea with this book was, as the Enlightenment was to privilege the autonomous, rational agent, which turned out to be white, male, and Western. Actually, my idea was to include, to let participate the living interbeing. So you see, I try to frame it very differently to the autonomous agent, and the idea was that what in our time is most missing is actually our awareness to be alive and all what that entails. And one thing which it entails is what I try to make big in my talk is the inner experience to be this living reality. That's one thing. But you can also put it more structurally and just could say, okay, life means that your uniqueness is always temporary and it is always owed to others which transform themselves into you. So it is profoundly, it is more than a world of relationships. It's a world in which individuality becomes dividuality, in which actually the egoship is a true illusion, and you can prove it biologically and in experience.
So is it fair to say that the Enlightenment was about looking outward and maybe dissecting nature and learning how to conquer it and control it, and enlivenment is somehow an update to that vision? Or is it only an update, or is it truly a paradigm shift? Is it outward to inward, or is it more than that?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult for me to answer this because it's somehow a question how to package it. And I mean, enlightenment.
That's what you do with a book, right?
Yeah. That's and I mean, it's important to see that there was a genuinely so enlightenment has also facets. So it has the facet to privilege a certain idea of the world, which was utterly dualistic and mentalistic and rationalistic. But of course, it also followed the idea of democratic freedom. So that was also in it. It was also it was also the idea that we can create a tool which is accessible to everyone, and everyone also has the right to access it in order to negotiate outcomes. And so there's something generally also valuable, worthy to conserve in this. And in this respect, I would say what I try to do is indeed an update, and to remind that that our lived body with its irreducible interiority, which is actually shared with every human or more than human person in this reality, also needs to be included in this democratic equal deliberation process. That's the update version.
We'll delve into that more. You already mentioned dualism. Heinrich Pees, who's sitting right there, gave a wonderful talk about monism, basically the opposite of dualism, I would say, right? He's a theoretical physicist from the Technical University of Dortmund, and wrote a book with a clear nod, I would say, to more mystical and spiritual traditions called The One. So Heinrich, for the people that weren't there, what is The One?
Well,
or who is the one?
That's no easy question. I mean, so for me, coming from physics, in physics, in quantum physics, we have this phenomenon of entanglement. If you build up larger systems out of smaller systems, and the larger systems are entangled, then you can't say anything at all about the constituent systems anymore. And in quantum mechanics, moreover, a system, an object, is totally defined by its properties. So if you don't know the properties of an object, you can't really say that this object exists at all. So in entangled quantum systems, it makes no sense to assume that the constituents exist. And
yeah, but still, my question is more: what do you think the one is?
Yeah.
What is the one underlying reality that quantum physics shows us in your interpretation?
Right, I'm coming to that. So the point is, if we apply this idea of entanglement to the universe, and research in the past years has shown that quantum objects, they aren't confined to little particles. They can be pretty big. So if we apply that to the universe, then the entire universe is one big entangled quantum system. So that means that all is one, that there are no constituents. So what is this one? That's a hard question. I mean, since what we know are only our experiences. We know matter, we know information, we know consciousness from our experience. But if all this is merged into something which is beyond belonging to a more fundamental reality, I think we don't really have concepts for that. So,
No.
So for me, the one is what looks like matter, what looks like information, what looks like consciousness from a certain perspective.
We don't have concepts for it, but there are wisdom traditions that say exactly this. I mean, the Tao Te Ching, the holy book for the Taoists. I think the first verse reads, "The real Tao cannot be named," and it also entails this concept of the Tao, this underlying oneness in reality. How do you look at those traditions? Do your findings rhyme with these ancient traditions?
Yes, definitely. I think it's surprising how close they come to such concepts which derive from modern physics. And as you say, also in Taoism, you have this idea that you can't really say what the one is. So, yeah, I think we can think about the one only about something which looks like the things we experience from our perspective, but which is beyond and prior to.
Yeah, there's some people who would say you could call it consciousness. It's an idea that's on the rise also in brain science and some weird corners of quantum physics as well. What would you? How do you look at that?
Well, for me, consciousness is something we experience in our daily lives, right? I know I'm conscious. I suspect you are conscious. I suspect everybody.
You can never know
conscious.
for sure.
But I'm rather skeptical that this is the defining property of the fundamental reality, which is beyond everything.
Sitting next to you, Heinrich, is, yeah, and I mean this in the most loving terms, but a very annoying person who is able to do anything, really. She's a philosopher at Wageningen University. She works for a think tank. I was at a music performance a couple of weeks ago, and she can actually sing. And she put out a movie last week. And you think a lot about post-humanism, right, Julia? You had a nice talk already, but what do you think the most hopeful example is of post-humanism? Where do we see this post-human future actually unfolding?
Thanks. Can I shortly respond also maybe to what...
To the annoying part.
No, to what also has been said before, because I think it's a beautiful setup also.
Yeah.
Like, we started by criticizing dualism with a beautiful new word, enlightenment, and then going towards monism. And actually, what I've been struggling with myself, and that's also the humanism versus post-humanism, dualism versus monism. Indeed, you say maybe it's a paradigm shift, but I was wondering, so we came from this dualistic world where we're actually still in that dualistic world if you look at how we treat nature and other people, and we are scrambling, maybe like scratching the surface of starting to understand maybe monism from the few insights that people have from quantum mechanics, which is such a rich, wise, deep, profound wisdom to tap into to start to understand more the monistic world. But for me, the question would be, if we leave behind dualism and if we embrace monism and if we embrace that we are connected to everything and we are maybe in a post-humanist world, what is then our role as human beings? Since we will always be human beings, perceive the world as such, have a role as such, have a responsibility as such. We're dealing with the climate crisis, how to make sure that we don't fall back into the dualist type of thinking while still perceiving this responsibility and agency that we should take also.
And do you see that future arising somewhere already, or is this pure concept and philosophy still?
Yeah, so I think we cannot say something about that, right? What that comes after post-humanism or connecting the monist and the dualist, or the, I mean,
Because we're not in it, and so it's
no, and we should
unknowable
also
to us.
let go of creating another grand Western narrative. And you've also introduced, like, maybe we can learn from other indigenous cultures, which is where we already have such insights. But the problem for me there is we are Western, modern people, and you cannot just cherry pick or shop around in other cultures. You can always let yourself be inspired, but there's a limit to that, right? You have your own context and you should be meaningfully interacting with your surroundings in the way that your Western world allows you to. So I'm struggling with that. I'm wondering what you guys...
Well, and Elisa, actually, your work, Elisa Giacardi, professor in post-industrial design. Actually, I like your job title in Milan a lot better, more than human design, right? It touches on these very topics, doesn't it? Where does it fit in? Where does your work fit into this puzzle?
I really like a lot your question, because it's one that I ask myself, but I also often get asked as we attempt to propose alternative design approaches or design methods. I'm actually trying to wrap an article up about unlearning design based on my experience as a teacher in teaching more than human design. What you said, it's so palpable when you teach students that are keen and willing to engage with some of the topics that we were just discussing, but are contemporary, modern people, and they really have a hard time to let go, and they don't know how to let go, and they would like the recipe from me, telling them, how do I do it? How do I let go? And what I think is perhaps a way of moving past some of these contradictions in engaging with these ideas and theories and philosophies, and yet being very much situated and positioned in a reality that's quite removed from those ideas, is for me a responsibility as an educator.
But isn't it also a question of doing and experiencing and experimenting and then breaking out of this old maybe Enlightenment or Western-based paradigm is also rooted in thinking too much, whereas your work also relates to doing stuff with design. You shot this great
You know,
stuff in forest, right?
absolutely. I mean, what I try to do is to generate knowledge through design so that I don't simply try to translate or apply ideas that were born somewhere else and in a different context. So through doing, through making, I like to engage those ideas and generate new knowledge as well. But for me, at the end, I don't think that the ideas, the concepts, the shifts that I produce will necessarily change design practice today. What I'm hoping is that it's a small, humble change in how we think and do, and that the real responsibility is in educating our children.
Right, you take the long view, and
I take a long
probably
view.
that is the way how belief systems work, right? The Enlightenment wasn't invented overnight either. Joost, I saw you nodding. Joost Vervoort, coolest job title I think in the world, assistant professor in transformative imagination.
Associate professor even.
Oh, even, yeah,
I'm
wow.
moving up in the world.
Wow. Simply stunning. And also this kind of annoying person that does a lot and a lot of different things. You do psychedelics research, you do gaming research, you're a frontman in a black metal band called Terzijde Horde. So, what was today like for you? Was it transformatively imaginative enough?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, don't worry. It was transformatively imaginative enough. No, I was really struck by today. I was mostly spending time in the theater cafe in the session that we were in, and sort of watching and participating in the other sessions. Yeah, I think it's really amazing that this kind of space can be created. My topic, and a part of the topics that I work on, is imagination infrastructure and infrastructure for mystery. And I think we're sitting in it, you know. And I mean the festival. I mean all of this possibility.
What really strikes me is that these topics, what we're talking about right now, is I think maybe even 5 years ago could not be discussed at a serious university. Is that hunch correct, or am I seeing things?
I don't know if that's exactly true, but what I find really exciting is that at Utrecht University, I just go for stranger and stranger topics, and there's just not a peep. They're like, "Yep, it's fine. Go ahead."
But so maybe you're good to delve into that big chunky question of what kind of time this is then. What kind of time are we living through? Is it a special time, or are we chronocentric about it?
Is it a special time, or are we chronocentric? I think it's a really difficult time, to be honest. When you ask me the question, what is the time we live in, I get very sad, I suppose. Yeah, I think that it's a time of. I'm a scenario thinker originally. This is my sort of my basic background is future scenarios, and people always ask me, "Are you positive or optimistic or pessimistic about the future?" And I say, "I'm all of it at once." You know, one day it's terrible, the other day it's more optimistic. I think I do think it's a time of where many things are meeting each other at this moment in a way that I do think is unprecedented.
But isn't it also a time to transcend sort of the dichotomy between negativity and optimism? Because there's another word, and I think really does transcend pessimism and optimism, namely hope. Hope is something you can be while being pessimistic, and hope is an active act, and hope is seeing the optimism in pessimistic circumstances. So I always sort of feel this annoyance when people ask me the same question, whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic, and I say no, I'm neither, and maybe all at once, but I'm mostly hopeful. And being here today and listening to your talks and seeing also the resonance of these themes in society and even in science does make me hopeful somehow.
Yeah, it makes me hopeful too. But I do feel like there's just such a massive challenge around it as well. So I feel like the possibilities of a step change in society are there, but they're also constantly getting exterminated and murdered and everything. So
But we're also sort of sketching the seeds of a new system or a new story somehow. Um, do you see them growing and going into bloom somewhere already?
Maybe. I just think life is very fragile. I think beautiful things and better ways of doing things can very easily be destroyed utterly, and they're very precious, right? And I think being too complacent about that and just feeling like, oh, things will turn out better. You know, for a world to turn into a nightmare, a lot of us just have to be asleep at the wheel, and before you know it, you're like, oh, okay, I guess this is how we're living now. You know.
Yeah. And if I ask the other panelists, what kind of time are we living through right now? I know it's a bit of an abstract, big question, but I think you have thoughts about that, right? Do you, Julia?
Thank you. I think a concept, I'm not sure. I think what connects many disciplines here on this bench is deep time, I would say. So
Deep time.
in
You have to help me a little
biology,
bit.
the idea of deep time, so you have on multiple scales things happening, microseconds, even smaller than microseconds, all the processes in a cell towards the genes that are part of everything that's alive that knows this deep history. But also I think deep time really comes with quantum theory, where you think about entanglement, everything is everywhere all at once. I think also in the metaverse.
Be careful. There's a theoretical physicist next to you, right?
That I think maybe you can answer this afterwards. But the fact that we're also building these virtual spheres where we're experiencing simultaneously different scenarios happening at once, that's really opening this idea of deep time, I would say. And that means also it's not about us, it's not our time, right? It's
but
bigger.
there's something in the air and something also in the urgency of the planetary crisis, of the ecological crisis, that does make it feel like it is our time to some extent, because we are nearing tipping points, and this story that's been sort of sketched today could be a way out of that mess. But I'm actually also curious about Heinrich's take on deep time. Does Julia's interpretation of it make sense in physicist terms?
I have to admit I don't know much about deep time, so I cannot really comment on that. But I have two other comments. I mean, one, what you already suggested, I think, is I believe that we are right now facing global crises, which are very difficult to be reached or to tackle from individual agents or individual nations. So we need global cooperation to tackle these crises. And I think this requires a change of mind, and this change of mind may be found also in other contexts, like in science, so that we think about entanglement in quantum mechanics, for example. Another comment I wanted to make is I'm not so skeptical that this view is so alien to the Western view, since I think much of the Western culture emerged in the Renaissance age, and the Renaissance age came with a revival of the philosophy of Plato and Neoplatonism, which is very monistic. And so you spoke of a paradigm change. I think the prototype of a paradigm change is the work of Copernicus. And Copernicus' book, which introduced the heliocentric model, starts with a reference to Plato. It clearly is inspired by Platonism. Also, ideas such as the dignity of man has been introduced by Pico della Mirandola, who was a Platonist. So I think these ideas are not so alien to Western culture. We just have to remind ourselves of these ideas.
We have to rediscover them somehow, but they have become a bit cloudy along the way. But I think you're making an important point. There's a great biography of Alexander von Humboldt, great discovery traveler and ecologist, who really pioneered the ecological view of the world, and somehow we forgot about it in mainstream biology and other sciences, it seems, right? Joost.
yeah, I'm thinking still about your question about sort of optimism, hope, and so on. I do think that these sort of paradigmatic changes that we're talking about, they do make me very hopeful, because there's such a deep paradigm shift, and at the same time they resonate so deeply with people at an intuitive level. I think, which means that changes can happen much more quickly, even if they're not sort of seen. If these paradigm shifts, these ideas become more accepted. I don't think it's just about sort of a linear change. We're talking about changes that affect everything. So these kinds of paradigm shifts do make me very hopeful in that sense.
But it still requires some deep changes and some deep maybe undoing, right? In stopping certain ways of looking at the world and behaving in the world. What do you think we need to leave behind, Elisa, to
Well, I just wanted
move
to
forward?
maybe, before answering that question, following up on the question about time, we talk about a lot in many conferences, dark times and difficult times and perilous times, and it is how we feel, right, on the brink of a very peculiar time. But when we talk about time, there's always this projection away from here and from now, and I feel like we perhaps, as we unlearn and undo some of the categories and the ways of doing that brought us here, we should be just more present, because I think it's really hard to predict. The world is never been deterministic, and I think that every generation might have felt to an extent, and I do understand that what we're looking at is quite daunting, but I think it's dangerous to be deterministic about how we might end up, and that.
Yeah, I think being too apocalyptic about the state of the
Right.
world induces despair, and that's the furthest away you can get from hope, I guess, right? Andreas, how do you look at this? How would you qualify this moment, this weird moment in time?
Right now, it's a great moment in time. just trying to be present. And yeah, I mean, I like what you said, like looking at hope, and you took it from Václav Havel, who or maybe you didn't take it from him, but
and
he
Joanna
also,
Macy,
he also
actually.
said it, yeah. And maybe it's this thing somebody at some point says, and he said, he added that hope is that which makes sense regardless how it turns out. And that's the important part. So hope is actually what love would do if it had a say. And, you know, that's always good. And, you know, it also feels good. It feels right. And then, you know, your question, is this a terrible time? If you are hoping, so if you are, you're surrendering to that which makes sense, then you will also make sense to yourself. And then there will be this faint level of, how can I call it, of being loved from somewhere, which shows you that it is okay. And it's actually this faint level which people experience in very dire situations, which then somehow comes from some point, and which always makes sense, and which always is there, and which is the place where life comes from and where life is given. And so, you know, if you go to this place, then it is always, how did you say? You used the word, no, you didn't use the word, what was the? Mystery, yeah, miracle. Yeah, no, it's your job, actually. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic.
But at the same time, what you say is that there's this place where you can go to by being quiet, by not thinking, and at the same time, to foster hope, sometimes we do need concepts, and we do, as your book is called, enlivenment, words like that. There's an Australian philosopher.
Wait a minute. Because this is very much the direction and the dynamic of this panel. which is very classical and typical, is, hey, what can we do? Now we heard all of you.
I want to leave with a shopping list.
You don't only want, you already want to make the order, although you don't have a credit card, but you're still browsing the Amazon website. So if we just if we just kept it there, if we just didn't go into this, okay, so how can we upscale hope? How can we mainstream?
Well, we still have half an hour left, Andreas.
We could even try to go there for half an hour,
or just be quiet together.
We could try to do it, and it would be very interesting. But if we just sat with this, and then of course something would emerge. And if you sit with, like I put it, if you sit with that which makes sense, which, if you ask your heart, is to nourish other lives, if you just sit with it, you will just start doing it on a very small scale, maybe. But you will. It feels so great that nobody will be able to take this away from you. If somebody wants to sell you something different, you say, actually, no. I just want to be nourishing because this feels so right. And so what I advocate is just to try not to find solutions, but to listen to the heart. And my friend and colleague, brother, Bayo Akomolafe, he calls it post-solutionism. He says, no, let's go into the darkness and we will be found by the light there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a profundity to what you're saying, clearly.
I hope so.
Yes.
I want to.
Yeah, Joost, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing, really beautiful, and it connects a lot to this notion of mystery. So when we were talking about mystery in the Theater Café, the impulse to start working on mystery and infrastructures of mystery was because I'd been working all the time on this notion of what do we do next, how do we imagine new pathways towards the future, so on, so on. And when you're talking about we should be more in the present, right? The future is always enacted in the present. The future is a social construct that's playing out in the present. And the same thing with the past, by the way. Of course, the past happened, but the way that we engage with the past now is something that we are doing in the present, right? And I think if we immediately constantly go into where do we go next, how do we come up with it, what new narratives can we make that are invigorating and empowering, instead of that actually landing in, for a moment experience how incredibly strange it is to be alive, and to just be with that for a moment, and then from there everything opens up, I think. And it's not the solution for everything, and the politics don't go away and so on, but it is an opening,
I will be devil's advocate here a little bit, and because I feel it, I feel both a resonance with what you guys are saying. This is true. Stop talking, be quiet, just be there, be with uncertainty, embrace chaos and mystery. But when I step out...
He didn't say this. He didn't say this. These are already concepts. He didn't say this.
Okay.
Now take it really seriously. Actually, what I think what you suggested, or what I would suggest, is just face this incredible experience that you are. That you are. You are, the Upanishads would call it, you are the knowing self that was unborn and will not die. You are. I mean, this is so freaky, and it's also so natural, both, You are. And just sit with this, and this has no concept. We're trying to find a concept. David Chalmers tried to find a concept. Everybody, it hasn't a concept, but it is, and you're in it.
Yeah, that concept is quite hard to merge with the concept of moderator, I'm afraid.
To offer a solution, I don't think sitting within and being in it means not doing other things, right? I think that you can speak about the world and conceptualize about the world in 1,000 different voices with 1,000 different ideas, and you will never really exhaust this experience. So you can talk all you want, yeah.
Yeah, no, I will be talking again. Yes, I'm sorry. And my other feeling that I had was that when I step out of this room and I enter the town, I see the hustle and bustle, I see the cars driving, I see people eating Big Macs, I see people booking their next flights. I see a lot of things that are not done in presence and in silence and in being with it. And there seems to be a contradiction there, is that yes, being aware and raising your own consciousness is probably a good way of being in the world and relating yourself to the big issues of today. But it's not going to solve them. And I know it's a solutionist thought, but hey, we are in deep shit and some things need to be solved, right?
Just quickly to respond to that. I just feel like I really have to respond to that. I think it's not there's a false dualism there about being silent and non-responsive and acting in the middle of life. I think I would actually say that from that experience of deep knowing, etc., lots of ideas, lots of opportunities, lots of solutions can arise, right? So I don't think it's either or. I think from that place comes real creativity, comes everything.
Yeah, but creativity also comes from combining the awareness and the emptiness with real world stuff, with real world words.
There's no division. All of that is being as well. So that's a false dualism, I think.
What to say next, right?
Like all dualisms are false dualisms.
It's the one.
Okay, maybe I'm just curious about Heinrich, actually, because you write about this as well. You write about the one. You write about this underlying source, so to say, this monist source of reality. Selma, how did you listen to this strange and slightly awkward conversation?
I got lost a little bit, I must admit.
Where did we lose you?
I don't know.
What made it to? What made you drift off?
A post-solutionist would say getting lost is actually the necessary condition.
That's good.
So you can be found.
Okay.
Elisa, do you have anything, or I see you sort of scooting around a bit awkwardly as well.
No. There's 3 microphones. It was just very entertaining, but there was also a lot of profundity. What are you asking me now?
Well, I'm still sort of looking for the shopping list, right? What do we do? And in a more serious way, how do we relate to this, the enormity of the challenge that we're facing, the strange times?
It's just really, it's just really hard on an individual level. Hearing was saying it too, on an individual level, to give you an answer that offers some kind of solution to such a daunting scenario. And so I think that the answers that you gave him are resonating with me as well. And if I think of instead of what I can do from that position of presence as an academic or as an educator, that's...
Yeah, maybe that's also where my question comes from what to do with this in a professional setting. Now I'm a moderator. I'll not be a moderator in a quarter of an hour, but I'll still be a journalist. You are scientists. You are working for a think tank. You are a designer. If we agree that Andreas might have something going for him, right? How to apply it to a profession or to an actual life in the actual world?
You change country and try to bring all what you have learned. I think that what is happening in this country when we talk about imagination, more than human, posthumanism, is quite unique. In 10 years ago at the university, as you said, talking about these things was really, really weird. And now instead we have positions, we have research groups, we have new courses. We just redesigned entire master's
and
course in Delft.
how did you notice that it was weird, that it was not fitting for the current?
Because people were asking me how I could translate what I was saying into a solution. So, but it was really here and now. What do I do with what you're telling me? How do I translate it? How do I apply it here and now? And somehow something began to change, and we started to have different kind of conversations. And I think there is a lot of attention. This very festival is an incredible opportunity to talk, to connect, and to push further the agenda. So I think that there is something that has happened in this country, and I'm really happy that somehow as a professional I contributed to that, right? So the new master courses now in Delft in industrial design have more than human design as a mandatory course, right? And bringing that to another country and leaving what was very a comforting position, a very cushy position. After 10 years, you know your ways and stuff, and then you just go to another new place and you do it all over again. And it takes, takes a bit of courage to do it every.
Follow your own
Yes.
path in that. Heinrich, I think you are the most senior in this panel in terms of how long you've been in the field. How have your fellow physicists responded throughout the years on your theories on monism? Has that changed? Is there something shifting there?
Well, this idea on monism is rather new to me. I mean, it's my daily bread and butter research is somewhat different, right? I understand how certain elementary particles behave and whether neutrinos, where neutrinos get their masses from, and how this affects the universe and things like that. So this broader philosophical idea of monism and that it is connected to quantum physics, this only came over time, discussing with people who really work on quantum foundations, also through personal experiences and so on. So it's not something that I'm talking about since I started doing physics.
All right.
So,
but is my notion correct? Because I'm only an outside observer here, and but what I find striking is how the very word consciousness has entered quite serious publications in quantum physics, right? I think last year there was a bundle out, Consciousness in Quantum Physics, by Oxford University Press. It's not in the realm of the spiritual and the new agey anymore. And of course, this happened in the 80s before with Roger Penrose. But there seems to be something in the field that allows for greater openness towards these types of questions, right?
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, I think people are more open now. Also, lots of research on quantum informations, which now contributes to the development of quantum computers, would have been seen as very weird and very exotic, I think.
Yeah, so we are actually entering weird times also in physics now.
Yes, I agree with that.
I would like to give the audience some room for questions. Do we have a mic that we can throw around? Yeah, right there. And I saw a gentleman right there at the front in the white shirt. Oh. Embrace the chaos. Be present.
Okay, doet hij het? Yes. I sort of like your question about the shopping list.
About the?
But about the shopping list.
The shopping list, yeah.
But let's say, as Heinrich explained, that everything is complex, but is one system, which is very short for saying what he took half an hour to briefly explain. And where, I'm sorry, Andreas explained that on the let's say the Earth's surface level, we are also connected by this cycle of you know, living and dying and etc.
Breathing.
And that, so this is a complex system. And this is why Elisa was explaining to us that we should not think that we can control that.
Yeah.
So we need to make our next steps one by one so that when we see what happens, then we can see what we have to do after.
Yeah.
So one step at a time.
It's actually quite an important point, and maybe that relates to the new lens that's arising in sciences, but also increasingly in society, is that indeed we are part of this complex system, which is fundamentally unpredictable, and the old way of doing with shopping lists is actually for controlling the predictable, and we're now entering something way more strange. Andreas.
I have a little idea. This was actually a serious attempt of wrapping up. So congratulations. You did it like in 3 sentences. And yeah, so you know, I just had an idea while you were speaking. If you really, because you were asking in this direction of paradigm shift and is this time different, and so it's just an idea, just a thought, and I just throw it out here to somehow present it and test it. Couldn't we say that since maybe for a long time, maybe since Greek rational philosophy or since modern times or since Renaissance, the idea was that man cannot understand ultimately, but can control. And what is maybe coming back, or what would be nice to have back, or what will come back, is just the both opposites, that we can understand. Actually, we do understand, but we cannot control. And when I say can understand, I'm referring, as now you know what I will be referring to, I refer to the non-rational ability to experience our being this reality, and from there knowing this reality. I mean, that was Heinrich the most striking take home to the universe message from your talk, was that when actually there is only one, I am this one. Because it doesn't make sense to say there's one and then there's me and I'm looking at this one. So I am this, everyone is this one. So, you know, if you can from a certain perspective, you can act, and you even do act as this one. And what I tried to do as a biologist was to show that actually the construction of an organism, the bringing forth of me and you and the plants, is actually an execution of being one. It's a way of being one. So there is one axis, which is our experience of being this one. And I mean, hey, and we have this, and we will look at this again.
You can actually see this oneness if you look to nature, like every preceding generation did. I collect shells. I go walking and look for shells on the beach. And you can see the same curves in shells as in galaxies. And you see the same mathematical formulas in basically every complex structure. So this oneness is visible, but of course it's still a question of how to interpret that and how to be in that.
Just quickly, I think we should be deeply curious about what the hell is looking out of our eyes into the world, right? We can look at it in structures and patterns, but what the hell is this consciousness that's looking out into the world? It's very strange. It's talking, you know. It's very peculiar. But to answer the shopping list question, I think this is why I'm so interested in infrastructuring, because it's interesting to think about creating the spaces where these things can be explored, creating conditions for working in a different way, right? Rather than saying, what do? We have to take this step, this step, this step. Why don't we, you know, instead of going to the supermarket to shop, can we imagine a different building instead of that supermarket, right? So that infrastructuring, and then because you infrastructure for the unknown to arise. You create the openings for that, the peace, the conversations, etc., etc. A student of mine is part of organizing citizen assemblies, which is a new thing, right? It's happening all across the Netherlands, all across the world. People are coming together to talk about policy issues. And she says that lots of people come in and they have very selfish political positions at first, very self-centered and so on. And then they talk and talk and talk in these little groups for a number of sessions, and their positions start to become more systemic. They start to become more other-focused slowly, right? And she's working with people who have very intense political perspectives in that way. And she's sitting there talking to me about this very, excitedly. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, who are you? Right? This is amazing. There's a consciousness there talking about organizing citizen assemblies, lots of energy, right? There's incredible real life things happening, and they're done by people who are miracles,
Yeah. Well, talking about spaces and people being together, I still want to have like 1 or 2 questions from the audience, if there are any. I see a hand right there on the edge. Can we get the mic there? Wow.
Nice work.
Thank you so
Home
much.
run.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all like incredible, like really inspiring speech and also checklist. I thought it's like everyone's talking about experience and oneness, and then what kind of acts we need, and then actually their answer is like in our titles of this events, love, and
Love.
yes, love. So we have a curiosity or like care or responsibility. All things can be translated as a love, but I'm just curious, how do you see love in these different positions and actions you try to think about?
You know what the great thing is? That this was literally my next question. So,
I knew it.
yeah. No, but love. I mean, we're at an event called For Love of the World, and a lot of the things that you say sound like love, right? But how can we? Oh no, wait. Maybe we could. No, not how. Not how.
You want a definition, right? Let's do it. Let's do it. It's
What is
easy.
love?
It's easy. It's easy. Love is the interest that life be.
You have to. I don't understand. Yeah.
You have it in your heart. First, it gives you your body, and then through your body, it gives other bodies their existence. Love is the interest that there be life. You can apply it on your partner. Or to say it, to make it a little bit more mundane, because it's a very interesting tool, in human partner relationships, love is the interest in the aliveness of the other.
The interest in the
Love is the interest in the aliveness of the other. Now you can check your relationship. Good luck. Love is the interest in the aliveness of the other, because if you are in a relationship, you make yourself a tool of love as the general interest that life be. And that's our job as humans.
Yeah. Any other takes on love, Julia?
Yeah, I think that's another word for biophilia, right? What you're explaining. Or am I right? Am I
Biophilia.
wrong?
Biophilia. If I can, if the condition is that reality as such is bios or zoe, then yes.
Bio as life.
Yeah, reality is life. Reality is alive.
Then yes.
Yeah, then yes. Yes.
No, I was just also wondering, because you started your presentation with a definition of love, actually. But I think because we live in this time where there is no time for love, truly. We have no time to look at the flowers and the butterflies. We have no time to truly feel the mystery that's actually there in front of us. We have no time to really truly sit back and meditate on the wonder of being alive. I think if we can put something on the shopping list, it would be looking for these pockets of resistance, right? I think you're doing a wonderful job at doing that, Wouter. Like bringing together in your newsletter all these pockets of resistance, of instances, of people, of stories, of people that try to go against the capitalist system or against the whole efficiency thinking or against the whole industrial mindset. That is love, right? Look for those moments where people are not yielding to that control-minded, capital-minded world machine that we are all ingrained in, but really try to look for those stories and give attention to those stories, because love is also attention, right? It's not just, writing about it, but sharing it also with other people, because love is something, if you give it, it becomes more. It's not something like money. You you spend and then it's gone, but it becomes more. That is also, I think, you are doing a great job at doing that already. You have the answer.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Let's leave it at that, right? No, I think actually that wraps it up.
I have one thing, 1 point for the shopping list.
I'll note it down.
Did you imagine this? And we can go and shop it immediately. I would put on the shopping list, like every day, go 1 minute into your heart and stay there. And I would suggest we do this now. And when I say go into your heart, I might explain it a little bit. So your heart is the non-material organ with which you perceive and give love. And for going there for 1 minute, it's enough that you just think of what you love. Or you think of the earliest flower you met this spring. And we just go there for 1 minute together. Thank you.
A warm hand of applause, please, for this panel. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And I have the honor to invite Leon Heutz to the stage to really wrap this wonderful event up.
Well, I'm not going to do a wrap-up of the wrap-up. My name is Leon Heutz, and I'm part of the Studium Generale team who organized this whole event this evening. And I have some thank yous to say. To start with thanking the theater here, which made this all possible. We really worked together. So thank you, theater. I don't know where you are, theater, but somewhere here. And I also want to thank all the students who worked with us. Many students here worked this evening and of course months before. This is really a huge production. It takes a lot of time and effort to do it and energy. And the students really helped with us. So students, if there are any students here who worked with us tonight, thank you very much. I want to thank our partners, of course. Many partners, you can see them over there. Thank you, partners, of course. I want to thank our speakers of tonight. You sitting here, thank you very much. And all the other speakers who perhaps are already home or perhaps already drinking at the bar, of course, thank you all. And then a very special thanks to the SG team itself. We worked together for this project a year. Sanne, we thought about it almost a year ago. And to see it actually happen is really a miracle. It's a mystery. It's something mystic. So thank you very much. And also want to thank, if they're still here, I want to thank Susanna and Louisa, our, let's say, temporary workers who really are the aesthetic and the soul of this event. So if you're still here, thank you very much. Thank you all. And last but not least, I want to thank you, the audience, for coming here to engage in this kind of experiment, to talk about this kind of, well, paradigmic kind of things. You've been sitting here for 6 hours. Just imagine that, how wonderful that is. And so thank you, again, also yourself. And there is still 1 hour to go if you want, if you feel the energy. There's now an after party going on in the theater cafe. So if you still have the energy to go and to dance a little or something like that, to go with the rhythm, with the flow, then you feel free to do so. And if not, I wish you all a very good night, and thank you very much from my heart.